Sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
Good evening. That's a little louder than I thought. Good evening. How are you? Good. Was the food good? It was wonderful. Thank you so much. I want to say, if you don't know me, I am Joe Ferry. I'm the pastor here at Southwest Lutheran Church. I know many of us do. And I am really excited to be here with you tonight as we get to hear some stories from a couple friends of mine and members of our congregation, Brandon and Vicki Graft, and their journey through addiction. It's one of those things where I know I've been part of the story, but I'm looking forward to hearing all of it and how it hit you guys and everything else you have to share. Let me share just real quick. If you're not familiar with our building, or if you need anything, there's food over there. Please feel free to get up and get some more as we have our night if you're hungry. If you need restrooms, they're right outside the gym door. You'll find them there. And if you need a trash can, it's down at the end of the serving line, so you can find that too. One of the things that I think we're going to see tonight is how God is always faithful, and He really does have the power to heal us. He really does have the power to restore our bodies and our minds and His spirits as well. And this doesn't mean that if we struggle with something like addiction that God is not doing His good work in our lives and delivering grace to us and forgiving our sins and working to make us new. But if we struggle, right, we have hope. We have hope of healing. We have hope of renewal. We have hope of freedom from bondage, even to addiction, and all sorts of other things. I would love to share the gospel more with you later if you'd like to talk about that. But for now, why don't we start, and I'll start us with a prayer, and I'll invite Brandon and Vicki up in just a moment. So please pray with me. We'll pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for this day and this opportunity to hear about the journey of Brandon and Vicki and their family. Lord, we pray for them tonight as we gather. Give them strength and courage to share their story and help them to know that we love them entirely, and we are glad to be here with them, and we are glad that they're with us. Lord, for all of us as we hear, help us to hear the good news of Jesus that is working through this whole story, that you never leave us, Lord. You are always faithful to us, and one way or another, Lord, we will have healing through your Son's death and resurrection. Bless us tonight as we talk as well. Bless our fellowship. Thank you also for the food and for all those who prepared it. Just in everything, Lord, be with us. Teach us and grow us tonight and help us to become more and more the people you have made us to be, with compassion, wisdom, and knowledge to show your love to the world. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, let me introduce now Brandon and Vicki. You guys can come on up. I have known both of you for around 8 years, which is as long as I've been here. I'm sure I got to know Vicki a little quicker than I got to know Brandon. And like I said, I've been part of the story, but we get to hear the whole story from you all. And what I know about you, Vicki, a faithful mother, wonderful lady in the body of Christ, former counselor and teacher, or school counselor always? Teacher for a while, so spent a life serving, right? Yeah, I'll say it. It was good. And Brandon, who has overcome much. Yeah, so I'll let you guys say more. Here's the microphone. Take it away.
I remember these chairs.
Think I'll be able to get out?
No, I can't get out.
I want to put that farther back. I don't think she's coming to it.
I'm never getting out. Okay.
Well, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Brandon Graft, and I am an addict. I struggled for 15 years or so, the better part of 15 years with addiction. Well, you know what? We'll just start from the beginning. So, 21 hours old, I was at work with Mom. Why? Because I left the hospital at 21 hours old, and Mom had to go back to work. So I was spending the afternoon at Dr. Porter's office with Mom, and I am adopted. So I was not biological to anyone in my family except for my brother. That's huge. I was adopted into a great family, all around. I had very little, if any, struggles. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my hand. I had a boot in my butt for a lot of it, but I deserved a lot of that. So we're just a working class family. We worked hard. Mom and Dad worked hard for what we had. And I know that had I not been adopted, I would have experienced what's one we could call true struggle. My struggles were self-inflicted. So growing up, never had to want for anything that I needed, and was taught to work for the things I wanted. So, I guess we'll fast forward a little bit. When I was, I guess I could say, right off the jump, kindergarten.
I thought you were going to say 13.
Well, I started to think when I started getting in trouble in school,
Oh, kindergarten.
and that's the reason I was thinking, well, why'd I leave Arcola? That's right, because during recess, Dad would have to let his class out and then come down the hall, spank me at recess. And then wouldn't you know it, if you get spanked at school, you get spanked at home too. All right? So it's like a 2-for-1 thing. So I was ornery, would that be the word?
Well, let me interject here.
Keep me
So
honest.
Brandon has always been a social being. He loves to talk, and he loves people, so that when he was 2 and 3 at church, we would lose him. And he would always be talking to adults, most of them, 50 and older. He just gravitated to adults, and he talked to them as if he were an adult. And they loved it. They just really embraced that. And there are some people who don't like that, though. And teachers seem to be in that category. They want their students to know their place, and Brandon never did. So I would go visit school. I remember second grade especially, because I would have to walk past his classroom hallway to get anywhere in the school, and most of the time his desk was in the hall, and I could wave as I went by, because he just was always talking. He went to Montessori school as a 4-year-old. We thought maybe this is the answer to, because Montessori is all about discovering and really very creative. And so when they go in the morning to preschool, they have all these different choices they can make, and they are supposed to come in, put their things away, go make a choice, and be in a station. And the teacher called us, and she told us this process, and she said, the problem is Brandon just goes from station to station and talks to everybody, and that's just how he's been. So school problems mostly in the early years were just not. He just never bought into a teacher's way of doing things. He had his own way, and nobody could really. Everybody would say, "I love this kid," but he won't shut up.
Are you describing me or Holland?
Yes.
They're right. Needless to say, had my ups and downs through grade school, but got through it. Was always, didn't get through suburban. At the end of suburban, I was at the end of my 7th grade year there. I had finally caused enough ruckus there and was kicked out of school from there. So I went to Carroll Middle School for 8th grade. And all through this time, I'd been active in sports. My brother and my cousin and I were always good in our sports. We always, all 3 of us wore the same numbers in basketball at Suburban. Fortunately for those two, they got to be taught by my dad and my dad and my uncle, my dad and my grandpa. But by the time I got to that age, they had enough of me. They didn't need to be my coach. They didn't, my brother, my cousin put them through the ringer. But anyhow, so sports was a good outlet for me. I know that like my summers were filled with either sporting events or traveling around doing various shows, whether it would be at a horse show or a cattle show through the summer. Always doing something. And sports camps. I mean, does it really? I think they get the gist of it. I was ornery. I was, well, for the...
Was there anything else going on at that time?
Sports? Nothing yet. No. You talking about the drugs? Oh, we're going to get there.
Cigarettes first.
You don't get kicked out of school for cigarettes.
No, you
No, you get whooped. You might get whooped at home. So I guess it was about that time. About 7th grade, I had tried smoking cigarettes. Well, I guess it was before that. That was like 3rd grade.
Well, I don't remember that.
No, and we got caught smoking in the barn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was in 3rd grade. So my grandma, who lived downstairs, Mom's mom, she smoked, and so did my cousin's mom. And so meaning my brother and my cousin, I'm not going to take part in that, had stolen some cigarettes. And I remember we had gotten 1 pack of cigarettes from Grandma, 1 pack of cigarettes from my Aunt Susie, and a pouch of Red Man tobacco from my grandpa. Well, we got caught. And it was all fun and games for Grandpa. I will never forget this, because we were down at the farm where there was milking. And they were milking the cows. Grandpa was over there milking. Dad and Donnie are yelling at me and Ian. Ian's scrubbing windows. Aaron gets home from soccer practice and then has to come join us and get yelled at. And so we're getting yelled at pretty good. And then Uncle Donnie looks down the aisle. He looked at Grandpa. He said, "Dad, they took some of your chew." And he stopped on a dime. He said, "Was it open or was it a fresh pack?" I think it was fresh. Oh, and then there were some few words I can't say. We got children here. But Grandpa was not happy, and it was over with from that point on. We had to do some cleaning around the barn. I'll tell you right now, this windows, I don't care how much you scrub them, they ain't coming clean. So, you want to go? Okay, so, you don't want to make me go back. So, moving on. So then I go to Carroll Middle School. Still active in sports, and doing a lot better in school there. Didn't have as many problems.
And you were on medication.
I was on medication that whole time. So, but did start taking more like psych meds and stuff like that at that time to get things under control. Trying to figure out what was going on and stuff. And I think at that time we'd found something that was sort of working, had me under control a little bit. And it's like I said, it seemed to be working. But my problem with that is I would start on something and then I wouldn't continue. So like once I'd start feeling better, then I'm all right, I don't need to take them anymore. And then things would slowly go back downhill. I started smoking pot a lot more in 8th grade. And at the time, it was just fun. A lot of times it would just be me and a few buddies, and we'd end up going out and playing paintball in the woods and stuff like that. And it was just something to do. It wasn't anything that was a problem. Nobody was an addict. Just some stupid kids smoking pot and having a good time. Okay. I would tend to taper off my medicines or medications more so when I was doing that, because it was just, the pot seemed to balance me out in my mind. And okay, that was just in my mind, I suppose. If you look at actions and stuff done, then I could probably say that that wasn't true. So 8th grade went fairly well. There wasn't too many problems. And then on into high school, things started to progress. I continued on through sports till senior years when I stopped wrestling. Junior year was my last season. That's when I got hurt. And yeah. But the whole time, I'd gotten hurt did I get hurt sophomore year too? So I got hurt my sophomore year. And
You had a cast on when you were 15, that would have been
beginning of sophomore year. So yeah, so I was out for the beginning of my sophomore season in wrestling, and I had broken my hand, and so that gave me a lot more time that I didn't need to be at practice. And so during that time, it went from smoking pot and drinking some beer on the weekends with the guys to smoking pot about every day, then drinking quite a bit on the weekends. And home life didn't get any better, you know. Start putting a distance between the ones I loved at home and myself, and was more with my friends. Was out doing things other than what I needed to be doing most of the time. I believe sophomore year, at the end of sophomore year, since I'd missed most of the wrestling season, I was pretty much just with my friends, so I had started doing cocaine at that point, and nothing really took off in a good direction after that. So summer after sophomore year is when I started selling cocaine and running around doing those things, and what I thought was having fun at the time. Went to pretty heavy drinking all throughout junior year. And then I had gotten hurt again wrestling in my junior year and was out for the rest of the season. And that was pretty much the end of me doing any sort of good. After that, it was pretty much just drugs and alcohol to that point.
Can I interject here for a second? So from a parent's point of view, it was 8th grade, freshman year. We were more worried about behavior. He wasn't doing well in school. He was arguing with us more. He wasn't getting along with his brothers and sisters. Just a different kid. And we had gone with, we'd offered teachers, he was in counseling. We'd offered to have teachers meet with a counselor. We were trying different medications. The drinking and the pot, we were totally unaware of. We knew about the cigarettes. We knew that occasionally he was sick, which didn't seem like anybody would be sick that much. But honestly, we knew something was wrong, but we were focused on his bipolar diagnosis and school, because you know, you want your kid to graduate from high school. We all know how important that is. But honestly, we didn't know. We had no idea how involved it was. At the same time that he was getting into this, his older brother, Aaron, also adopted. Aaron and Brandon are half-brothers biologically, and Aaron was in really involved with stuff. That's where we thought the problem was with drugs. With Brandon, we were just thinking, it's school and the bipolar and cigarettes. That just tells you how, as a parent, you can kind of be left out of things. Your kids don't tell you everything. And when they tell you something, in this case, a lot of it was lies, and we believed him most of the time. We got better at not believing. But so we didn't really, I'm learning stuff tonight too that I didn't know. But
One thing that she didn't know is I was far more involved than Aaron was earlier than he was.
a lot, I know you were earlier than he
A
was.
lot farther involved.
Yeah.
Well,
So, go ahead.
we'll save that for another day. But so at the end of junior year, like I said, I'd gotten hurt on wrestling. I knew I was out for the season, so I just focused on whatever Brandon wanted to do. Whatever you wanted me to do didn't matter. What I wanted to do was what I was going to do. I wasn't one that just wanted to blatantly go out and hurt people. I didn't want to do any of that. I just wanted to have a good time. That's all my drug use or any of that was all about. Like, it just started in high school. Like I said, just basically smoke a pot, drinking with the friends. I think most everybody in here's probably had an experience. I would hope, I hope not, but I would venture to say a lot of us in here have had that. Just having fun, and that's where it started. By the end of junior year, I was selling a lot of cocaine. I was running around, I was doing a lot of cocaine. And then senior year rolls around, and I decided to go to the alternative school because I thought that was a better thing to do. That was the worst decision I could have made.
Because you weren't really earning any credits at the regular high school.
I was.
Not very many.
They give you a credit for showing up, don't they?
No.
Oh, no.
Brandon had the attitude that if he didn't like the teacher, you may have heard this as a parent, if he didn't like the teacher, he wasn't going to work for that teacher. And here we are saying, you just got to pass. You just got to do the work and pass so you can graduate. Don't worry about whether you like her or not, or him, or whatever. But that didn't work with him. He couldn't see the sense in that, nor could he see the sense in reading Shakespeare or any of those nonsense kinds of things. So,
Why do you need to know how to pick out the verbs and adjectives in a sentence? I
so
don't
the
do that when I read the
alternative
paper.
school seemed like a good idea to us too at that point. And because this kid was so likable still, that the vice principal told him, no one goes to the alternative school and comes back. No one. But if you can get your act together, I will let you come back.
They wanted me to wrestle too.
Yep.
No, that was my big being around why I wanted to go back, was because I was highly sought after for a state run my senior year. And so I wanted to go back because I knew I could win state. There was nobody in the match setup that I would have faced that I hadn't already beat. So I was pretty much going to walk into a state championship. But I never, hey, you know what? That's the past. We're not going to get over that. However, yeah, I mean, they were going to let me come back, and nobody had ever done that. To my knowledge, I don't think they'd ever offered that to anybody. So senior year, after not going back, it was February 20th or something like that. I think I decided to go down to Bloomington, Indiana, and I decided to go to Bloomington, Indiana and sell cocaine, and was arrested. I was set up. This is when Mom and Dad find out that I've been drinking, that I've been smoking pot, and now that I've been selling cocaine. I'll never forget that phone call. Mom answered. I said I messed up. So what'd you do? I said, cocaine. She said, selling it or doing it. I said, selling it. And that was a hard phone call. I knew that the charges that I had were not good. Not good at all. I'd been 18 for all of, 5 months, and never had been in trouble before in my life. So never been in trouble. Right, you know. And I knew that I had messed up. I knew that this was bad. What I didn't know is the amount of support and love I had in my corner. And I don't know why, but the Lord looking over me. That started another, it's been 34 now, so it'd be 16 years. And for the lack of a better way of putting it, and I think you guys have heard this, the way Dr. Mullinex puts it, and that was the year that the law started pimping me. And by that, you know what I'm talking about. Dr. Wyatt Mullinex is a very respected doctor here in town. And the man is about 2 years older than God, and is a ball of wisdom. A man will forget more about recovery in one day than I'll ever learn. But the way he puts it is the law will pimp you out as long as you allow him to. And by the grace of God, today I am about a month and a half away from that being done and never having to worry about that again, because I've changed my life. But there's 16 years that we need to catch up on first. And that is, so from that point, I'd quit doing cocaine right after that. From that point, I knew that the stroke of luck that I had with that case, there was a lot of money spent that was not mine. Yeah, thank you.
Expensive attorney.
Yes. There was a lot of people pulling for me in my corner. A judge that for some reason was the only one in the courtroom, at least 2 or 3 times that I can count, that was the only one in there that didn't think I need to go to prison. And that's myself included, you know. And, you know, she reminded me of Aunt Sherry, the judge, my mom's sister, Aunt Sherry. Very sweet lady. Don't make her mad. And that's how I looked at this judge. I mean, just the way she looked, the way she carried herself, she just reminded me of my aunt. And I remember the last time it took them, I was on 4 years of probation. It took them 3 years to get me to pass a drug screen because I wouldn't quit smoking pot. To me, it's not that important. It's not that important, you know. And finally, this judge looked at me and said, Brandon, next time I see you, if it is not to release you, you are going to prison and you're going to do all 4 years. Okay, you have my attention. And so I gave him that 1 year of clean time.
I will interject again here. So when Brandon got, first of all, if you're a parent and you've ever visited your child in jail, it's a very humiliating experience. They don't treat you very nice just because you're not the person in jail, they kind of treat you still like you are the person in jail. And so going to see him in jail in Bloomington was like, it was just awful. I mean, there were a couple times that I couldn't even go. Jim went by himself to see him because I just couldn't do it. But when he came out of jail, we had to go do some stuff, sign some papers. The attorney came, and he walked into the room, and when he was arrested, picture, this is a coat. It's like a fake fur coat. It was real mink. Was it? Okay. A white mink coat. That's what he got arrested in. So they bring in his belongings.
I looked like a drug dealer. All right. I did.
They bring in his belongings, and he puts on his white mink coat, and he's kind of, primping a little bit. And the judge said, "You haven't learned one thing." And he really hadn't at that point. He really hadn't. We were glad to get him out, but he was happy. He was joyful. You would have thought he never did anything. They hadn't been in, how long were you in jail?
5 days.
No, you were in jail longer than that.
No, the first time it was 5 days, and on the 6th day you guys bailed me out. No, yeah.
No, it was a longer time than that. Anyway.
5 days, 21 days, 90 days, 180 after that.
Okay.
My stay's in Bloomington at the free hotel.
Yes. Okay. But he really hadn't learned anything. He was sorry that he got caught. He was sorry he had put us through a lot, and he was sorry because he knew this guy was an expensive attorney, which we were told you got to have a good attorney or he's going to go to prison. So he had not learned a thing. And he was still 18?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's 18 through 22 is when I finally got off.
Okay. And those years are kind of a fog in my mind because he was in and out, living someplace else, living back with us, living...
Did I move out with John during that time? Yeah.
Living with friends.
Through that time, though, so for 3 years, I just basically did just enough to stay out of jail-ish. Took a few more steps back there, a few more trips. Enough time that by finally the last time that I went there, I was walking to the cell block, and people knew me on different cell blocks. I'm not even from Bloomington, nor am I an IU fan. Go Boilermakers. But at that point, I knew that something needed to change because I don't need to be going to jail in Fort Wayne and people knowing me while I'm there, let alone 3 hours away from home and people know me in jail. So I finally got clean for that last year, 18 months or so. And my first inkling of recovery was during that time. And there's a lady, her name is Noor. She was working at Community Corrections. Her and I found a very common ground on something, and she could relate to what I was going through. And she wasn't just somebody who'd read a book. She'd been there. She'd done that. She'd been around the block. She knew the things that I knew. She knew some of the people I knew. And there was another lady, and I cannot remember her name for the life of me right now. Murray, do you remember the recovery place? I think it was run by two ladies. Sid got sober there. Sid he had a big part in this. I cannot remember the lady's name. It was a little house that they'd send you to. It was like on, not Maine. I can't remember. I'll keep talking. But there was a lady in there that was a counselor who had been she was a heroin dealer in the 70s. And, of course, when I went to her class, she could see that I was a little bit arrogant, if you will. I know it's a surprise, especially to this table here. But she finally looked at me and she said, well, you think you just know everything, don't you? I said, I know a lot. She said, well, what'd you do the first time one of your clients died? You have my attention. I had no idea what it was like at that point to have somebody die that bought something from you. And no. A lot less people die from uppers than they do from downers, fortunately for me. Linda, that was her name, Linda. All right, I can't remember the place's name, but her name was Linda. But she was very influential to me. She was one that could get through to me. But I love this lady. She was the first one to really show me. She planted the seed in me of recovery. She planted something in me that I knew that I could get better from. Unfortunately, it took several more years. So I went back after probation finally got done and stuff, and I was able to, then I started smoking pot again, thinking I'd be all right, and that was, I'd just smoke pot and be cool. Not for this guy. After some time, I'd gotten my CDL when I was on probation and stuff, and I'd started driving truck for my dad and my uncle. And things were going well, and then started smoking pot again, and I started smoking spice at the end of my probation term because I could. That was when it was still new, and they weren't drug testing for it, and so, I could get high, I could go in and I could take a drug screen and still be okay. That was a terrible decision. That was something that pretty much took over for the next 10 years almost, 8 years. And many bouts in and out of the hospital with that. Withdrawals with that are pretty bad. For me, they were anyhow. I know some other people, they weren't so bad, but I mean, the withdrawals from that would have me in the hospital. However, was drinking, smoking, and I did some coke every once and again, but nothing. It wasn't my fancy anymore, really. Fast forward to about 26, 25 maybe. And
You were 25?
yeah,
What year would that be?
well, it's not 25 yet, so. So 25, that'd have been what, 7 years ago? So 2016. And a friend of mine called me and said, hey, Brandon, why don't you come over? There's a guy that wants to meet you. He's got something that's never been brought to the table before. Not for you. I said, all right. So I go and I meet this guy. This guy had methamphetamine. He was a president of a bike club. He is actually the national president for this club. Somebody who, as a matter of fact, I befriended really well. We got along really well. And so I started riding a lot with him and the other brothers of the club. I know it is. That's where meth took off for me. It didn't start with buying grams, half grams, or anything like that, or a line or anything like that. It started off with, there was 5 pounds sitting on a table, and we were just out having a good time, right? It was a party that just didn't end for the next 6 years. I started to, basically nothing else mattered. In that 6 years, well, from the time I was 22 till I was 29, so 6, 7 years, something like that. I'd been fired from my family company 3 times because of making decisions that drugs were more important than work. Hanging out with the brothers. That was just the last reason. But that had nothing to do. I was sober when I did that. And becoming more involved in the club business than I was in business that mattered. Yeah. Well, I started when I was at Kendall's. Yeah.
Was that 2017? 18?
I don't remember.
I don't remember the year either, but Brandon had moved into my husband's parents' house across the road from us. Things had not gone well over there, and we had told him he had to leave.
It couldn't have been that long ago because...
There's COVID in there, so it could have been 18 or 19.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, because it was after all the federal indictments came down. Yeah, that was...
Okay. We didn't know what all he was doing, obviously. This motorcycle group, this is the first time I've ever heard that story. I told him there would be things I would learn tonight, but we told him he had to move out, and we would support him going into some kind of program, and we didn't. This is where I feel like, as a parent, we were floundering, because we didn't know where to have him go, and so we knew of a place. We had heard good things about it. He agreed to go there. We got him signed up, ready to go. We left on vacation. He left the house. We came back from vacation. We talked to him. Yep, things are going great. He never went. So for about 6 months, he pretended to be in this recovery place and working. He wasn't. Part of the time he might have been.
I was working. I had a job.
Yeah.
Pretty much the whole time. But I mean.
But it took us a long time before we ever found out that he never went. We just thought, we thought he'd tell the truth, but he didn't. So there were a couple of things. I know we're running short on time. A couple of things I want to mention that really hit us hard as a family. And time sequences get out of order for me sometimes, but there was a time when Brandon was really hurting. This was probably before that time, when you were living at the house, at Kendall's house. He was in really bad shape. He had been kicked out of another house, and I had talked to him on the phone, and I said, I will meet you at Parkview Behavioral. And he said he could get there. And so I'm sitting in the parking lot in my car waiting, and this vagrant comes walking along, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going to come to the car. He's going to ask me for money. What do I do? And I looked at him again, and it was Brandon. And he looked about 70 years old, and I just started crying. I didn't even know who he was. That time he got into a program because he said, he didn't have insurance. We didn't know anything. They worked with us, got him into that. That didn't last. The next time was when my daughter, we didn't know where he was for a couple years, I guess, and my daughter's driving through downtown Fort Wayne, and she sees Brandon walking down the street, and he's homeless at that point. And so she turned her car around, pulled into a parking lot, hailed him down, which he didn't really want to see her. He didn't want her to see him like that. Those are the times that, break your heart, when you know you're helpless. You're just really helpless. You say, finally, I think that's about the time we finally said, okay, God, we're done because we can't fix this. And he's on his own, and don't come back to us because all you've done is lie to us. Those were the hard things that we had to say. I think the last time you went to jail was kind of the beginning of this time, right? You want to lead into that?
Well, right after that, when I had saw Kelly that day, I had a warrant, and so that was 2018, I believe, because shortly after that, I was arrested, and I was sentenced to probation, and when I'd gotten out of jail, I went right back to using. Met up with my probation officer, and she asked me, we got to the meeting, and she said, well, can you take a drug screen? I said, all about that. No. My exact words to her were, I can't pee in that cup, because if I pee in that cup, I'm going to burn a hole in that cup, and if I don't burn a hole in that cup, you might as well drink it, because there's a lot of good drugs in that cup. And I don't know what I know I was high at the time, so it sounded good to me, didn't sound good to her. I said that, well, maybe if I could do an inpatient clean out somewhere, like PBH, and I'll be all right. Once I get clean, I'm all right. I can stay clean. Then she kind of button hooked me, and she told me she said, okay, I want you to contact Park Center and do whatever their recommendation is. So I said, all right. So I got an interview with Park Center, and they wanted me to do their 30-day inpatient program, which I was extremely reluctant to do. But I ended up going, because either that or go back to jail, and I didn't want to go back to jail. So I went into their 30-day program, and wouldn't you know it, Nora was working at Park Center at that time, and she was about the only attachment to recovery at that point in my life that I could remember. I mean, she was there. I saw her and I knew her right away, and so it took me probably 10 days before I was really even engaged or would come out of my room. But after that, it sort of started to click again. I started to clean out, started to get part of groups and stuff like that. Well, after that, I went to their call it maybe their outpatient thing over at Choices, which if there's a place in Fort Wayne you don't want to send somebody, Choices would be it. I'm not going to say anything good about them. Anyhow, from there, yes, I was on the Park Center side of this place, and at the end of the term of Park Center, so it was like 2 weeks on that side, I was able to pick a place I wanted to go. And that's where I found the place that helped save my life, and that would be the 13th Step House. I was introduced to Murray and the guys at the Step House, and that went well for about 3 months the first time. And they say that we're insane. Not just the guys at the Step House. I mean, they're insane too, but in addiction, we have the insanity in us, phenomena of craving and stuff like that. It causes us to just be stupid. Everything was going great. I mean, I had a job. I was hanging out with the guys, had a good group of friends, and this and everything. Things were turning around. And then one day, I walked out of the house I was going to get something to eat, told Dave, hey, do you need anything? Dave's one of the house managers there. He said, no, I'm all right. So, all right, well, I'm going to be back. I can go get something to eat. And wouldn't you know, somehow, and I can't even tell you the events that took place, I ended up right at the dope house, and I bought an 8-ball of dope. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why. I don't know what happened in between there and Rally's, which is a stone's throw away from the house. But now I'm back off to the races. I went right back out and right back to jail after that. It took 2 more years, right? So 2 years. So I didn't go right back to jail. I was out on the run for a year and a half. And then I had contacted Murray a few times in that time. I knew that when I left the Step House, I knew that I wanted to be back there. And it was just a bad feeling. I mean, nothing went right for me from that point on. Nothing. Not a thing. And it took another year and a half. So it took 2 years, really, because I spent another 6 months or 8 months in jail. And then I got out November 2nd, 2021. And I had been in talks with Murray. I got out. And I went back to Choices, unfortunately. But that was the only place I could go that my case manager, for some reason, would let me go. And I was out on house arrest. I spent about 3 or 4 months there. I was doing okay, but I got complacent. And I was working at Tammy's Towing, crushing cars. Things were going good again. And I found spice in a car that I was crushing. And for some reason, I took it. And I started smoking again. And eventually got in trouble, got caught, admitted to it, and I was sanctioned at the house. I was sanctioned by Community Corrections, and I thought everything was okay. The day before I went to go visit my daughter, for some reason they decided to just kick me out of the house. And, oh well, off to jail with you. Didn't have a choice. I spent another 6 or 8 months. Was it 6 months or 8 months I was in jail? Was it 8 months? So I was in jail for 8 months that time. And this whole time I had been talking to Murray. I've been trying to get to the Step House. Murray, you're a blessing. Thank you, Murray. Kept me on. He kept me on that list for over a year, wasn't it? It was a while. And so I was number 1 to get into the Step House for a long time and just kept getting skipped by number 2. while I was going through what I could go through. And I was in jail, and every time you're in jail, you can always leave with a better connection in the wrong world. And this time, it wasn't for me. You guys keep it moving. I had things I want to do, and drugs ain't one of them. I got out, so yes, November 2nd, 2021, after that, and immediately took my happy butt to the step house the next day, because that's where I needed to be. If I wanted to be serious, then I need to go and show up. And actually, Murray, you got the date mixed up by a month. I think you were expecting me the next month, and still made room for me and made sure that I had a bed that day, because I did spend some time on the floor in the basement of House 1 when the power went out, me and Matt Howard. But I got back there. That's the important thing. And from that point on, I had 8 months under my belt. You know, I was clean, I was sober, and I've remained that way till this day. And I anticipate on remaining that way, one day at a time. So,
When Brandon got out of jail this last time, he was like a different person. So we were trying to figure it out, my husband and I. It's like, Brandon explained it to us. He knows a lot about addiction, obviously. He said, you know, when you get sober, your brain can continue to develop. But when you're using drugs, it just stops. So for quite about a few years of his adulthood, he was a teenager still. This time, he was a grown-up. So he went for us, from like 18 to 30 in 6 months. But he was a grown-up, and he still surprises me with the things he said, because he'll say something and I'll be, such a grown-up thing to say. I'm just still not used to it. But I think that, you know, that's what gives me hope now, because he really is a different person than he was when he was on drugs. He's not that person. I asked him today, I said, so I'm going to ask you something, because maybe this will come up tonight, and I don't know the answer. Since you've been out and clean, has anyone offered you drugs? And he said yes. And he told me the incident and what it was. And what would have happened a few years ago didn't happen, because he really seems to feel, and honestly feel, that he doesn't need it anymore. He doesn't want it anymore. It's not, you know, now God willing, it'll continue. I know that, you know, it's every day is a new day, and every day is a step in the right direction.
but today I can play the tape through and know where it's going to end.
But Jim and I felt this time he was different. We finally had our sixth adult sixth adult child finally in the family, and that was a great blessing, a great answer to prayer.
I guess one thing is, it's like, you don't know, you know, addiction doesn't discriminate. I don't care where you come from, who you are, what you think you are. It can take hold of anybody, but you know what? Recovery does not discriminate either. We can all recover, we can all get through it, we can all push through. It's what you want and how hard you're willing to work for it. It's not easy. I'm just under 2.5 years clean, and I am still just a pup in the recovery game. And with all the things that I've gone through, and let me tell you, the first year of recovery was not all sherbet and rainbows. Yeah, sherbet and unicorns, right? That's what I was going to say. In the first year of my recovery, I lost my brother to an overdose on Mother's Day. And 5 months to the day later, I lost my dad. Both of those were unexpected and unforeseen. This book and the people that are around me and I chose to surround myself with, I stayed sober through that. And there's nothing that I think that I can't go through without that. And I don't, I always used to say, like, I remember talking to Miss Knorr, actually, at Park Center. I said, I don't know what I'll do when my dad dies. It was one of my biggest fears. And she told me something I'll never forget. And that was, don't ever put limits on your recovery. Don't say you'll stay sober if. Because if you say if, it's only a matter of time that you just give up on yourself on that. It's how we stay sober through it. I know that reading that book, going to the step house, hanging out with the guys, meeting with my sponsor, sponsoring the 2 guys that I sponsored, that's how I stay sober today, especially with all the resources that I have that you're going to hear about in just a minute from that guy, because I can't think of them all right now. But it's possible, and just don't give up on whoever you may be thinking about tonight, because you know what, you may have to love them from afar, but that may be just what they need, because that's what I needed,
And Brandon, we buried Brandon's brother, our son Aaron, on the anniversary of Brandon's recovery. And that was a hard thing. But this whole time, we have been surrounded by people who love us and love God. And my family has been wonderful. Brandon's got lots of sisters checking up on him all the time.
all the time.
And you find out who your good friends are. I have people who are friends. I still consider them friends, but I don't talk to them about Brandon, and I don't ask them for prayers because they roll their eyes. I can just see it in their eyes. Oh, there we go again. It's that trouble kid, and we're not praying for him anymore because it doesn't work. And I don't ask those people for prayers anymore. But I know the people that I can ask, and I know the people that will listen when I'm having a rough time, and I know the people that will support Brandon. And you got to have that. You got to find those people, and keep your connections with them and with God, and that's what got us through. It still does. Yep. Yeah. Does anyone have any?
I guess, does anybody have any questions? My final turning point? I could tell you exactly when it was. So when I was at Choices and they kicked me out, they called the sheriffs to come get me because I had to be in a recovery house or at the work release center, and the work release center was full. So if I did, and they for some reason would not let me go to the step house. My case manager wouldn't for some reason. So although there was a bed available for me, thank you, Murray, they wouldn't let me go. And I just remember I was laying in my bed, I was doing a relapse prevention packet, and the sheriffs came and said, told me what was going on. And I was like, oh, great, And I got out of bed, and I said, hey, can I change real quick, And it's like, yeah, it's fine. So they were really nice. They were really cool about it. So I changed, and as I'm getting changed, I realized that I know what I need to put on because I know exactly how long I'm going to be downstairs in the jail. I knew how long I'd be downstairs without a mat. I knew how long I'd be in the back room, and I knew how long it would be before I got upstairs to the block. So I knew what I needed to dress for because it's cold in there. And so I knew what I needed to be comfortable. And I remember sitting there, and I got to the jail, and I was just like, there's two things that happened when I got to jail. Number one, I was like, this is stupid. I should have never had to know how to dress to come to jail. And that was the thought. Like, that was probably when I realized it. But along with that thought came a peace that I have not had in a long time, because I knew that this is it. I don't have to do this anymore. So that would probably be it. All right. Murray, how about some resources?
Sure. Hey, guys, I'm Murray. Turn the mic on first. There we go. I don't really need to because I'm really loud, but this helps. My name is Murray Hunt. I'm the executive director for the 13-Step House, which is a really fancy title for whatever needs to be done guy. I might meet with a judge, or I might mulch the yard. You never know, depending on the day. So I have to comment a little bit on Brandon's story. I am grateful to have been a part of the day that you knew you had enough. It was the day that you called. I think he was while you were waiting for the sheriff to come. I was. And he said, "Hey, I just got kicked out. They won't let me come to the step house. So I'm going to jail for a while. When I get out, I won't have anything hanging over my head. I won't have to be anywhere, but can I still come there? Because I don't want to come back here again." And that was the new Brandon. That was a very different Brandon that I talked to on the phone that day than I had ever talked to before. And literally, you came in and you did the work, you did the stuff. And that's what we all do. I'm also a person in long-term recovery. What's today, the 21st? In 5 days, I'll have 15 years. Wow. If you had told me 15 years ago what I would be doing tonight, I would have told you were nuts. This was never in my plan. So there's a couple of things. So we've talked a lot about addiction, about the story, about what we go through. A couple times I heard Brandon say things like, I was a bad kid. Or, I did a lot of bad things, or I was stupid. You know what? That is not true. Addiction is a disease. And it's something that, for me, and I think not everyone is the same. For me, I was born an alcoholic. The traits, the things that I have in common with almost every alcoholic I know, I remember as far back as I can remember. The feelings of separation, the feelings of the anxiety, the loneliness, even when I'm surrounded by people who love me. That separation, that distance, that lack of connection. I felt that my whole life until I got sober. And I had to learn how to do that and how to find that. And so it is absolutely a disease. It is not people being bad or being stupid. It is somebody being sick. Somebody who's sick and they're trying to get well. And it's also the only disease that constantly tells you you don't have it. It's the only disease that says, one beer's just fine. It's only pot. All of those things, it will constantly do. And the other thing that it wants to do is because our strength comes from our connection with others, right? With our higher power with each other. That is what gives us the strength to make the right decisions, to do the next right thing. And our disease wants to separate us because that's where we're vulnerable. And our disease is really sneaky. It will say things like, that meeting's stupid. I'm not going back there. God, that guy yelled at me. God, it will do whatever it can to separate us from the people who love us, from the people who get us, from our higher power. It will do anything it can to get us alone because there it wins every time. So it's a really sneaky little disease. And it's funny, today I'm grateful I have it because of that. I was forced into much the same way that Brandon was, except mine, I was actually in lockup, sitting on the 2-inch vinyl covered mat, going, I can't live like this. I am not living. I am existing, and I'm barely doing that. A month ago, they told me I shouldn't be alive anymore. That's that moment that I went, I'm done. And I fortunately had the people in my life that I knew where to go and what to do, because I know without work, without effort, we don't stay there. The disease will come back. The disease will take over again. But we had that gift of desperation, that God moment. I just love that ours was both at the Allen County Jail. So we've been talking. The real reason I'm here is talking about resources. So if there's somebody in your life, or if you're struggling, there's a whole lot of things that can happen, that places to get help long before you necessarily need a recovery home. There are outpatient treatments, Bowen Center, Park Center, Headwaters Counseling. PBH has an amazing IOP. Yeah, a couple times. So that, and honestly, for me, I'm a retread. I got sober in '94. I was sober for 7 years, and I went back out, and I was back out for 7 more years. And during that time, I knew I needed to get sober again, and so I was going to do absolutely everything I could except AA, because clearly that didn't work the first time. What I hadn't ever actually looked at is that 5 years before I went back out, I stopped doing anything for my sobriety at all, right? And it is something that much like diabetes, I have to do something every single day. It's not like I break an arm and it heals and I'm all better. It takes daily work. Without that, my disease comes back, and it comes back hard, and it comes back fast. So I hadn't done anything, but I wasn't willing to admit that yet. So I went through all of the IOPs and the things, and they were all amazing, wonderful things, but they were never going to get me sober. Coming back into AA, into a 12-step program, for me was the only thing that was ever going to work. I'm grateful for those therapies now, because they help me today. They give me extra tools to help me work that 12-step program. But depending on where you're at, you know, not all of us have to get to where Brandon and I got to, you know. Some folks recognize, you know, we can get off that elevator wherever we want. And if it's just now kind of becoming a problem, you know, some IOP, a little bit of, check yourself and find out where you're at and what's going on. Pop into an AA meeting. See if that you know, see if you recognize, if any of that sounds familiar to you. Oh, I'm sorry. IOP is intensive outpatient. What it does is there's a lot of factual explaining what the disease is, how it works in your body, and then it touches on a whole bunch of different types of therapies. You get exposed to a 12-step program. You get exposed to a little cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. There's a whole bunch of things that it kind of touches on. And you come out with a great jumping springboard to sort of find a direction that's going to work for you. Because 12-step is not for everybody. There are some folks out there that go through smart recovery. There are folks that literally, you know, they were where Brendan and I are, and they walk into a church one day and they don't ever have to pick up again. I was not one of those people. I needed to find my tribe with people who have been where I've been. You know, that's what I needed. But so we have, there's a whole lot of outpatient therapy. Check it out and see if anything sounds familiar to you. If we're to a point where somebody needs something like a recovery residence, needs a little more stability, for men we have so many resources in Fort Wayne. We have the 13-Step House, we have Freedom House, we have Road to Recovery, we have Rise Recovery. There's a faith, and those are all 12-step based. There's a faith base called The Lighthouse. Brandon Bauer is amazing. There's Project Me, which is not a residential, and she's more of a harm reduction for folks who know there's a problem, but they're not ready to do anything about it yet. But we don't want them to die. So that's what she does, is helps keep people, keep with that. And I'm going all over the place, aren't I? Yeah, all right. And for Women for Residential, there's Redemption House, which is faith-based. There's the Rose Home, which is an amazing 12-step program. There's Hope House. There's Charis House, which is women and children. There's a ton of things out there. As far as treatment, we have both Hickory Treatment Center and Avenues that both do detox as well as like a 30-day stay. Again, a great place to Park Center. What? I don't know. I don't know enough about them yet. But I know they're open. I'm just not sure what the programming is yet. But a lot of them, these are places where you can go and detox, and then you spend the next 3 weeks basically after your detox, figuring out where you're going, learning what it is to do, so that when you get out, you can continue on with your sobriety, right? And if it's just a detox you're looking for, PBH, is our crisis intervention, and that's somebody who is kind of about where I got to. Quite frankly, I will never say that I was suicidal, but every morning that I came to, I was angry that I was still breathing, and for that, and then the step beyond for folks who are actually like considering that, PBH is an amazing crisis intervention center. They really are. And oh yeah, and actually they do more than just veterans today too. They have a percentage of non-veterans that they can take as well. Yeah, Shepherd's House is great for men as well. Yes, sir. Yes, absolutely. And for those who love us, whether it's a brother, a sister, a spouse, a significant other, Al-Anon is an amazing 12-step program. It is exactly what we do, only minus the alcohol or drugs. It's just like NA, it's just like AA. You work the exact same steps, and it changes how we process life. It does for you guys what it does for us. A friend of mine, she likes to say, she said, so the problem is you're addicted to alcohol and I'm addicted to you. I like sick and twisted people. Apparently that's the thing. And so it is an amazing program. And if that seems a little scary because you walk in and they're talking about sponsors and 12 steps and a book, and there is an organization here in town, and we're now expanding. They've got some meetings out in West Virginia now. It's called Mom of an Addict. And they're amazing. And it's wonderful. And it's not just for moms, it's for dads, it's for anybody who has anybody in their life who is one of us. And you don't have to do anything, just show up. You can sit and listen, you can talk if you want. At their meetings, there's usually a speaker, there's usually some information, and then there's some sharing. And you can share if you want, or you can just listen, or just find, somebody who is going through what you're going through, who understands. And if you talk, I promise there will be somebody there who knows where you're at, who's been there, who might be there right now. It is a much less intimidating place to walk into for your first time. Like if this is new and you're just dealing with somebody and you don't know what to do, it's a pretty easy place. And you know what? They even have them online. So you can even do it online without having to leave your house the first time, which is also kind of a nice way to ease in. But there's nothing like the face-to-face, one-on-one thing for me. Online's great, but I miss being in a room with somebody. I'm trying to think. And another resource that I just wanted to mention, because since it's sort of this is like a mental health continuing thing. So I belong to a couple of organizations, which is DAC, which is the Drug and Alcohol Consortium of Allen County. And we do like a prevention, intervention, and justice. There's 3 different parts of it. And that is pretty much all drugs and alcohol related. Another organization I belong to, which is called the System of Care. Allen County System of Care? I think that's right. There are between 600 and 700 organizations that are member organizations for this. And it is incredibly varied from one end of the spectrum, everything from Big Brothers Big Sisters, Great Kids, Autism, Senior Care, CityLink. Basically, any organization whose goal is to help someone is a member of this group. Through this group and its existence about a year and a half ago, they opened a brick and mortar office called Connect Allen County. Connect Allen County is in the basement of that building at Rudisill and Clinton, the Work One building. In the basement of that is Connect Allen County. And it does not matter what you need. If you know somebody who needs something, send them there. They can walk in and say, I don't have any food in my house to feed my 2 children. The navigator will say, come here, let's sit down. And they'll find a way to meet that immediate need for you, with you. The other cool thing about this is that because we know that generally things like that don't happen unless there's some other things going on, if you're willing, the navigator will help you figure out what maybe, instead of just doing the symptom, look for the cause, right? So generally for us, it's someone with an addiction problem or a mental health issue or a physical health issue. You know, it might be, I haven't been able to go to work in 3 weeks because I can't stand up and my job is a standing up job. You know, whatever it is, that's what the navigator is going to try to do, is they're going to try to do that to help fix the problem. But literally there is nothing there. It's no wrong door policy. You walked into Connect Allen County and say, I need whatever, and someone will help you find that. I think there's eight or 10 partner organizations that are physically in the office, and then there's 600 of us on the phones. Rudisill and Clinton or Lafayette. I don't know what it's called there. It's in the Work One building. It is Clinton. The old Sears building, yeah. That's what I should have gone with. I think that's it for resources and stuff. Yes?
I think maybe we should touch on the financial aspect of it, because a lot of people get discouraged of the cost of what recovery can cost and how many resources there are out there.
Sure. So if cost is an issue, because there's a wide variety. There's places like Allendale and Fort Wayne Recovery that are amazing if you have killer insurance. If you have HIP, they won't take you. But both Avenues and Hickory, which is it's a 30-day treatment center, work with HIP. They do that. If you don't have insurance, if you haven't applied for HIP and go to Hickory, they will apply for you and be able to admit you on a 30-day presumptive. So as far as treatment, there's a lot of options out there. And as far as then long-term, like for most all of us now, with recovery homes, none of us do insurance. We work with what's called Recovery Works, which is a state-based for folks that are coming that have an open felony with drug or alcohol, because they're trying to help with that one less thing to have to deal with is paying your rent at your recovery residence when you're trying to get your life back. And so they have certain requirements for that, but most of us take that now. But the other thing is, technically on our website or on our form says a $300 intake fee, which is your first week's rent, your last week's rent, a $30 drug testing charge, and a $10 big book fee. 95% of the guys coming in have nothing. They were just like me. I had spent every last dime. I didn't have a dime. I was $75,000 in credit card debt. I had nothing. We'll work with you. Quite frankly, if I don't believe that money should stop anybody. So if somebody comes into my office and they're there and they say, I don't have anything, that's all right. You know what? Stay here for your first week, settle. After your first week, start looking for a job. When you get your first paycheck, come in and pay your current week's rent and at least $20 towards your back. We'll make it. We'll do this okay. And almost everybody is willing to work with folks today, because, we're not leasing agents. It's funny, on one of my board members, who I dearly adore, but he is a commercial real estate agent, and he handed me a real estate application, like a rental application that they use. He's like, wouldn't this be a good idea? I was like, no, we would have no residents. No one could walk in here. So that is not something that, if that is something that you're concerned about, don't be. If you run into roadblocks, keep looking, keep asking, call me. We will find a place that the financial is not an issue to get started, okay?
I can't remember Murray. Call Brandon.
What? Oh, yeah. Yeah, call him. You've had my number for a long time. Anything else? Yes, Pastor. Yeah, all done. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions for Murray, though? I didn't want to cut him off. But I want to say something real quick, and don't worry, it's not time for a sermon. You may have heard my kids, and when the pastor has a more pressing reason to leave than you do, that's good news, right? But I want to celebrate one thing up here, and I want in the spirit of resources, I want to interpret things theologically real quick. So what I want to celebrate, though, is how much trust and how this is a safe family, right? I mean, to be able to share, like, Mom, you never heard this story before, and son, this is what we really felt. That's not something that just happens. That's kind of a theme, but that's something you develop through conversations, commitment, and love. And so I want to celebrate that because that is amazing. Yeah, we can clap for that. The other thing I want to share real briefly, sometimes Christians, we can make addiction recovery more difficult if we talk about sin in the wrong way. The scriptures are pretty clear, right? Our fundamental problem for humans is sin. And for us, especially if you're Lutheran, and we are here, but we're very comfortable talking about sin in a way that says you've done something wrong, and now you're guilty. But the good news of Jesus is that you are no longer guilty. You're forgiven, right? And that's helpful in some ways. For example, when you heard, have you killed someone? Well, the good news for you is that you are forgiven, right, through Jesus. But when it comes to addiction, the other way that we have to understand sin is it's not just something we do, but it's something that makes a victim of us. It's something that traps us. It's something that grabs hold of us and doesn't let us go. And this is why the Apostle Paul can say the gospel, is that it's for freedom that Christ has set us free. And so if you know someone who is struggling with addiction, and they come to you and they're high, and this never happened for Brandon and me, at least not that I knew of. I really came into the story most of all when you were already in jail for the last time, so you were pretty well past it. But it doesn't help to say, don't worry, you're forgiven, right? Because what does that say? Go do it again. There's no consequences. But that's not it, right? But if on the other hand, you can say, this is a terrible affliction, and the good news for you is that by the grace of God, it is not going to last forever, that there is freedom from these chains. That's really good news, right? And it's not necessarily going to come quickly or easily, as we've heard, but it does come. So if we can talk about it both ways, and it's hard to get right, it's hard to kind of have the right balance, but we can share both the bad news when it's needed, right? Could be you're guilty, could be you're trapped, but also the good news, right? That yes, absolutely, you're forgiven, you're no longer guilty, and yes, you can be freed, right? You can be made new, and this does not have to be your story forever. That's really good news, right? And it comes through the work of Jesus on the cross, dying and rising again, and the power of the Holy Spirit working in us to make us new, and all the practical stuff and all the resources and all the organizations that exist to serve, right? It all comes together. But for us as Christians, we know that in the end, it's the work of God in and through all these people. And what comes to mind is like Romans 8:28. God is working all things together for the good of those who love him. Even when it's very difficult, we know he still has our best interests in mind, even when that's hard to see. And that's why as the people of God, it's good for us to be people who are safe to talk to, people who are aware of the issues and aware of the resources, so that whatever that person's need is, right, we can still be good news in their life, either through comfort, either through the appropriate challenge, through referral to the right resources, or whatever it may take to help get that person closer to recovery and further from addiction, further from consequences, death, right? I mean, this is what you said a while ago, right? If we can save one person's life, it's worth to share any story, right? So thank you guys again for that. And you know, let's use this. Was there anything else that our organizers wanted to say or to share, or should we wrap it up? That's it. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you again to Vicki and Brandon. Thank you, Murray, for being here to share those resources as well. We're thankful for you all. Let's go in peace. God bless.